All right, now we are ready to add our color layer. So the first thing we need to do is to flat everything, okay? And once we get all of everything flatted out, we can start messing with things and deciding what colors we want what to be. So I'm going to make a new layer. We're going to set this layer beneath our ink layer. I've turned off my other sketch layer, so we only have the inking layer on now. And using the lasso tool, we're going to go ahead and fill in every spot that is going to need to be filled in with color, okay? So all these parts that are all blacked out, I'm not really worrying about those too much because the ink will be covering it. But everything else, like these little lines here, this horn, all of that stuff, I'm going to be getting the lasso tool to cover, and then we'll be able to fill this in one solid swoop, and from that point on, make sure we don't worry about painting outside the lines or anything like that. So a little time consuming, totally worth it in the end though. So I'm gonna go ahead and speed this part up, and I'll talk to you guys in a minute. All right, there we go. So let's go ahead and fill this guy in. I'm gonna go with a reddish color. I think that's gonna look really cool on him. A little bit too bright though. Thinking something more along those lines. A little bit more saturated. There we go. So that's what we're gonna start with for our flats, okay? Now we can go ahead and make new layers and start going in and defining some of these colors. So unlike with cell shading, we can do some blending here on our color layer and mix things up. We don't have to just stick with what's there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is have his underbelly. I'm thinking we want to be kind of like a white, almost cream color. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use my airbrush for this. We're going to go with a nice big soft brush. And I'm going to select my shape layer so I'm not going outside my lines. And I don't want that. And we can go ahead and start painting this in here. Okay, so I'm going to keep it down here on the bottom half. About like this. And it might already even be a little bit too bright. I might end up taking this down a couple notches and dimming it. So far I like that. Go ahead and put some in here in this nostril spot he has. And we could do some around his eye as well. Alright, that looks pretty cool. Then I'm going to use our hue saturation slider and darken it just a bit. It's a little extreme. And I'm going to warm it up too a bit as well. There we go. I think that looks better. Let's make a new layer. This one I'm going to imagine is going to be sort of like his scales. So like his back here. Let's go darker. Maybe not that dark, a little somewhere in between. All right, so like these scales on his back and stuff, and the scales on his head, I want to be this dark color. So you can see I'm painting over like all of the like tribal stuff and the feathers and the horn and stuff like that, and that's because I can just come back on a layer on top of that later and add that in. So I'm not super worried about that right now, because we'll just be able to paint over what we've done already. So I'm not really taking a lot of time to worry about those things at this point. So now I'm going to get my brush nice and small, and I'm actually going to select, we're going to go with the medium hard, and we can come in here and I'm going to start to fill in some of these individual scales where it begins to transition from sort of like this fade to his red skin tone. So this part's under his eye. I'm filling in. We're going to fill in the parts on his jaw. Fill in a few extra scales that even though we didn't ink, we can kind of just imply that they're there. Let's get these big ones on his jaw. Okay, we have these ones that are going to be coming. Well, actually, before we do that, let's maybe look at adding some here. Is it going to look too weird? I think it looks fine. Add some to the tops of these. And then we can use our airbrush and try fading some of these out a little bit on that bottom side there. And we'll come back to our medium hard brush and just add a few scales to the bottom of it there. Some on his lip. No, let's leave his lip alone. Looks better without it. We'll come over here to his neck though now. We can do these ones on his neck. Now let's go ahead and move on to his, we'll go ahead and make a new layer, and we're gonna go to his teeth. We're gonna paint those in, and those are gonna be kind of like a off-white yellow color, something about like that, a little bit yellower. Okay, there's his teeth. We'll do a new layer and do those sort of like strands on his head. I'm thinking these will be like a tealish color. Too bright though. Let's bring it down over here more. Maybe a little bit too bright still. That's better. We're doing it this nice bright blue color because it kind of breaks up the shapes on top of his head, and it helps us recognize that this is all one connected piece since they're all the same color. You can go ahead, we're going to do the inside of them the same red. We'll do it a little bit different red. But the inside is going to be red. Okay. Perfect. Now What do we have left that we need to do? The feathers, the horns, his eye, and I think that's about it. So let's go ahead and do the horns now. I'm going to do the horns underneath that layer. And they're going to be, we're just going to start with this, and then we're going to use our hue saturation slider to figure out exactly where we want it to be color-wise. So there's that. Let's go ahead and slide that around. Find something that looks a little better. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. And I think we need a little bit of color over there on the other side to help this make more sense and line up with people's eyes. So I'm going to actually come back and erase away a little bit of our inked layer. Just enough that I can add a little bit of shape there. And then we can come back to this layer and paint that in. Okay, that looks good. And then all that leaves us with is the feathers and maybe one more pass at the underside of his throat, I think. I might want to do a little bit different color on his throat. And his eyes we need to do. So make a new layer, select our shape layer again. This is going to be the feathers. And for the feathers, I think we should go with like a bright orange that's fading to black maybe, or white. Let's experiment, let's try it out. Okay, then we're gonna bring it red and get an airbrush in here and fade it down from those tips there. And then we're gonna go with practically black. And then we're gonna go with actually black, almost. All right, there we go. Let's do a quick pass on his eye. What do we want his eye to be? I was thinking white, but maybe we'll do something else. Let's see what it looks like white. I think it looks pretty cool white. I'm probably going to leave it. I am going to do a little bit of pinkish purple over here for the corner of his eye as well. It's needs to be a little darker and a little bit more red right there around his eyelid a little bit. Okay, maybe some over there on his nose. Maybe not. But on this chest layer, I'm gonna make a new layer above the chest one, and we are gonna go just a little bit brighter. Or maybe I was thinking, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe what if he had like some blue on him. But let's see if that looks good or if it looks stupid. Seems like we've got too many colors going on. It looks better without that, with that teal there. So instead we're just gonna go a little bit lighter shade of what we already have. No, we're just gonna keep what we already have actually, and we're going to darken that layer beneath it. So just darken that up. Just a bit, and then do a slightly lighter layer, and we can just merge those together since they're so similar. Okay, and I'm thinking that gives us a pretty good place to start with our colors, and we can start adding some shadows and effects and stuff. So that's it for this lecture, and I'll see you guys in the next one.